What a treat we have today. Well, not only this wonderful music that we just sang, but when I found out that these social media, I went to the website and kind of looked at it. You guys are doing such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful work. They're doing a walk for peace. It's called the 13 Moon Walk for Peace. And I love your acronym for that, right? Passionately engaged, affecting community everywhere. And so, I'm not gonna say any more about this. I want to give as much time as I can. She's gonna take about 10 minutes here, and I want to introduce you to the lady that's really kind of spearheading this, the heart behind it all. And you're gonna see why when she comes up and shares with you. Please help me welcome up Audri Scott Williams.
Wow. What a day it's already been.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you for your love. Thank you for all the laughter. Wow, laughter is such a healing balm, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, first of all, before I start, I'd like to recognize one of the most fantastic team or groups of people that I've ever met in my life. And they are certainly a divine reflection of all that is being called forward. I'll start in the very back, Dave DeFabo. You met earlier. Stand up, David. We walk, we can stand. Dave doesn't like to be put on the spot. Mary Woods, his lovely wife, also Baba Ojiji, who is one of our elders on this journey. Baba. And Karen Hunter Watson. And there's one other member of our team who is resting because she didn't get a good sleep last night, and that's my mom, Audri Scott Williams. I bring her forward into our presence. Mom is 82, diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 1996. She has traveled around the world with us and is on this journey as well, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's give a hand to Mom. I'm going to try to navigate this without bumping it off the stand. The 13 Moon Walk for Peace began on October 10th in Atlanta, 2010, and we are journeying for 13 months. And we will end in Atlanta on 11/11. 11. I've got to get all the ones in there, which is kind of auspicious. And our journey has been about awakening the heart of America. And some people say, well, how did this come about? And for us, Karen and I led a walk for peace around the world. It took us 3.5 years. And we walked on all 6 continents. We didn't walk in on Antarctica. Didn't seem very practical. Seemed very peaceful. And so when we came back into New York and began our journey from New York to Atlanta, what we noticed in many communities was stories that were not being told, human suffering that was not being acknowledged. And we looked at each other and we said, we can't stop here. We have to do one more walk. And you have to understand, we've been walking since 2000 on various walks. Thought this was our retirement moment. But we decided we couldn't stop here. If we walk all around the world to bring peace and love and joy, how could we not be aware and mindful of what's happening in many of our communities around the country? And of course, many of those situations have accelerated due to various things that are happening, particularly in our economy. Although, for me, what I say is anything that is happening is not because of the economy or because of this or that. What it truly is about is awakening the consciousness, because it's the collective conscious that has created the situation that we're in. So our walk is at that level. We seek to affect consciousness. Why? How? Because that's the why is the answer to that is because that's the only way we're going to affect long-term change. How? One step at a time. And that's not saying that in terms of a cliche. It's saying in terms of what it takes to mobilize energy, such as this, to affect consciousness. We have to constantly be in circle with ourselves to know that everything that's coming up inside of us is coming up for a reason. And so we can't take that lightly. So we spend a lot of time circling together, expressing and sharing, and sometimes it's tearful, and sometimes it's, you know, you got to go sit for a while. You got to go meditate, or you got to fast, or you have to do something, because we cannot be about anything that is not in alignment with where we are. So if we say we're going to walk for peace, then we have to be the peace. And that's a constant state of working, of reinforcing, and remembering. And that's the most important thing message I want to deliver today. The remembering. As we come into the awareness of the power and presence of who we are, as the divine reflection of God here in this world, to do God's work, we tap into what Tony was talking about. There is nothing impossible. Why? Because there's nothing outside of ourselves. It's all here. So we get to walk to be the example of peace, to be the example of hope, of change and possibility. So that when we meet someone, whether their life is going well and wonderful, we get to be in that with them. Or if we're on the Pine Ridge Reservation, where has one of the highest suicide rates in the world among teenagers, where conditions that you would not believe exist for humanity. But we can be there with them and say, you know what, we see you. We see you. And we'll carry your story. You can entrust that to us to share with the world. We were just in Lansing, it's hard to remember time on this journey, I tell you, just a little while ago, and we were staying in a community that was very rough. And many people kind of avoid this particular community, but we were able to plant a peace pole in this community. And when we did the peace pole planting, a young lady said to us, you know, it meant a lot to us that you would come to our community. And not only would you come, but you stayed here with us last night, and we got to talk and we got to share. Most people drive by our community. They won't even pass through here. So you see, it's that connection with the divinity in each person and each community, regardless of what it might look like, regardless of the outpicturing of that, whatever is going on. And it's so important because I tell you, there's so many people in communities, especially our young people, who are suffering. And yes, it has to do with the downturn of the economy, no jobs, the whole prison industrial complex, all of those issues. But you know what's even sadder? Nobody sees them. You started your service by saying, I see you, I know who you are. These young people are growing up in such a community of pain and suffering, and nobody stops to say, I see you, I know who you are. And that's the most important part of our walk, to touch the soul of America, all of America, and bring that soul up into the light, into the hope, into the dreams, into the passion of what we can be. But we can't be it if we're separated. We can't be it if we're blind. We can't be the hope for the world if we're pretending all is well and we don't really have to get too engaged. We've walked around the world. Karen and I have the distinction of being the first African American women to walk around the world for peace. And I only say that because that in itself, to many, would seem like an impossibility. We had no money. We started that journey. We had about enough to get 2 weeks into our journey, which would have taken us from Atlanta to about Alabama. And yet, we knew we would make it, and we did. And I say that not in a way of boastfulness, but in a way of illustrating the power and presence of God in you when you are tapped into purpose. You can do anything because God has placed it in you, and so it really is already done. You're just the physical manifestation so that others might have an opportunity to celebrate that in you and find it within themselves. And so in the 13 Moon Walk for Peace, we are asking people, what does peace mean to you? And you can go to our website and tap into all of that. Is that my time, Tony?
No.
Oh. Always be mindful, right? But you can go there and you can see what peace means to people. All kinds of people, from everywhere. But my message today is remember who you are. remember what you are. Remember the treasure of goodness that is within you. You can walk into an area that is absolutely in chaos, and by remembering who you are, transform that chaos into peace. Whether it's in your family, your community, the nation, or the world. What our job is to get enough people to believe it so we can shift the paradigm and raise the consciousness and vibration on this planet to make the world a better place. Our children deserve it. We have to remember so that we stop thinking as separate. Nowhere in the universe does separate exist. We are all interdependent particles bouncing off of each other, kind of circling around each other, orbiting and then crashing into each other. That's what we are. And so in me is you. In you, I am also. Yeah? Yeah. And so we have to remember that, because when I understand that completely, then I can't go into an area where something's not right and ignore it. I either have to engage prayerfully for a solution. I have to at least bring the love that is me into that setting, not in judgment, but in absolute total acceptance. And I want to give you a couple of lessons that have been key on my journey. In addition to traveling around the world for peace, I've also traveled and had the honor of taking elders around the world to meet with one another. Elders who carried a traditional practice of over 500 years in their lineage. And one of those elders was Auntie Poi Poi. And I'm going to end with these 3 or 4 elders. Auntie Poi Poi from Hawaii, and I'll have to find out from her family if that's truly the good luck symbol. But Auntie Poi Poi, who has now gone into the ancestral realm, talked about forgiveness. And she talked about it in the sense that we have to constantly be in the process of forgiving ourselves, because that's the only true forgiveness. You know, sometimes we think, I have to forgive you, or I have to give you for what you did to me. No, I have to forgive me for allowing what you did to even affect me, because that's not the truth. Right? That's not the truth. For Mr. Haile Makua, also a Hawaiian elder that I traveled with, now ancestor, he used to say we have to learn to love what we see, live what we feel, and know all that we possess. And whenever we were starting a journey that was going to be particularly intense, or something we needed to bring our energy in and be spiritually focused, we would begin with that. Because if you love all that you see, there is no problem. But he also added this piece, including yourself. And that connects with Auntie Poi Poi about forgiveness. If you haven't forgiven yourself totally and completely, then what? It's difficult to be in love with self. And your capacity to love outside is limited by your capacity to love inside. So love all that you see, including yourself. And then the other thing Mr. Makua said was, you know, in our head is where separation is. This is where we catalog everything, where we give it its label. And in our heart is where cooperation resides. And the challenge for us now is to slip from our head into our heart, from separation to cooperation. And he says we live in a place of choice. And the simplistic approach to it is choose. Where do you want to be? In your head or your heart? And then finally, an elder from South Africa, Baba Credo Mutwa. We were in a gathering together, and he looks and he says, there's a lot of fear in the world. We've forgotten who we are. How do we get that back and give it to our children? That's our question that we'd like to leave you with. How do we get that back and give it to our children? You know, in many indigenous cultures, and of course in our Native American culture, any decision you make, you have to do the 7-generation test. If it's good 7 generations out, then it's a good choice. If it's not, you go back to the drawing board and keep working on it. Wouldn't it be great if that's how we made decisions in this country? We can't forget about the generations to come. fear keeps us locked and bound and separate. And it's all an illusion. I can tell you that. We've had some real serious moments where fear could have stopped us in our tracks, whether we were walking around the world or right here in this country. But we looked at each other and said, well, God said if we do what we're told to do, we have a special covenant and no hurt or harm will come to us. So whether we ran out of gas coming down a 10,000 incline, or we're on the side of a road wondering where we're going to sleep that night, not having enough money for food or water, and then all of a sudden, all the magic happens. And we've gotten to the point now when those things happen, rather than go to a place of fear, we just sit back and say, let's see how God's going to work this out now. Trust. Trust. And so in closing, I leave you with a phrase that the grandmothers, who are my guides and angels all my life, passed on to us one day in circle. And that's this simple thing. If you can love enough, if you can trust enough, if you can let go enough, God will work miracles in you and through you.
Amen.
And then a chuckle. You may as well do it because you're not who you think you are anyway. Thank you so much. For peace. We are just so grateful to have an opportunity to be here with you, to celebrate with you, to receive your light and love as fuel for us to continue on our journey. May we all walk in the knowing that peace isn't something out there. Peace is. Thank you.
They have a couple of tables out in the bookstore with some of the things out there, some books they've written and some posters and things. And please stop by. This is what helps support them on their journey. So please stop by, and whatever you pick up, I know you'll love it. They've got some beautiful things, some beautiful books, some beautiful posters. So please support them in their journey. And after the service is over, as soon as we do the peace song today that we do, and we'll stand and hold hands like we always do and do the peace song, we're all going to head right outside to the front of the church. As a congregation, we'll go out there, and they're going to plant a peace pole for us that we're going to have. So we will do that right at the end of service. And again, stop by their tables if you would. In A Course in Miracles, it says this: I can see peace instead of this. This is from lesson 34. Peace of mind is clearly an internal matter. It must begin with your own thoughts and then extend outward. It is from your peace of mind that a peaceful perception of the world arises.